Good morning, all. It's good to see you again this morning, and we have a number of people who are joining every moment. So we will give people a few moments to get here, since the first thing we need to do in business is establish a quorum. So, not quite. Hold on.
Yeah, it's coming through. Wait, sorry. Now. I think it's good, dude. I think we're good. I don't know what.
No, but the people on the virtual side kind of told me that they couldn't hear, which can't be heard on her phone, which made this
Yeah.
where we're at now.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's coming through.
It's coming through. Yeah.
All right, good morning. I call the 60th Annual Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona to order once again, beginning with a couple of announcements to aid our work today. One is that there were a few people who were unable to see the shared screen yesterday when we had some presentations. In order to see the shared screen, if you were not able to yesterday, go to the top of Zoom and click on Speaker View instead of Gallery View, and that will allow you to see the screen when it is shared. We are uploading the PowerPoints from yesterday, both from Canon Pam Hyde and from the Reverend Dr. Leah Shade, onto the materials section of the Chime app. So those should be there by the end of the day so that you have access to all the PowerPoints from yesterday. And the full video of the Holy Eucharist and our convention worship is now available on YouTube. So I encourage you to go and worship with us if you are not able to on Thursday. I now call upon the Secretary of Convention to establish a quorum, which we will do today via a poll. So please indicate via the poll if you are here and if you are clergy or if you are laity. The Secretary has declared that a quorum is present. Thank you. I now appoint a registrar. I would like to appoint Kathy Black as the registrar. That requires the consent of convention, which you will also be doing via a poll. To appoint the registrar, please indicate yes. By a vote of 300 to 0, Kathy Black has once again been appointed as the Registrar of Convention. I appoint the Committee on Credentials. I appoint Jim Hose, Kelly Ryan, Lori Finn, the Reverend Scott McComas, and the Reverend Daniel Tantamonaco. I also appoint the following inspectors of the election: Patrick Watts, Herb Norton, Kim Stevens, Pat Carroll, Marie Farmer, Kathy Shires, Tiffany Kramer, and Serena Adall. I would like to appoint Don Bivens as the Chancellor once again. That requires the consent of Convention as well, so we are going to do another poll to appoint Don Bivens as Chancellor. And by an exact same vote as appointing the registrar, Don Bivens has been appointed the chancellor, 300 to 0. I appoint Clark Greger as our vice chancellor, and I appoint Austin Kerr as our parliamentarian. Austin is serving from his home in Flagstaff right now, so he is not at the table with us, but is prepared to serve as parliamentarian if and when that is necessary. Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me, Christ beside me, Christ to win me, Christ to comfort and restore me. Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ in quiet, Christ in danger, Christ in hearts of all that love me, Christ in mouth of friend and stranger. That is the middle verse of the hymn, St. Patrick's Breastplate, the one where the tune changes. It's called a burden, not because it's something that weighs us down, but because it's a refrain. It's something to be repeated. And I have been repeating that burden, that refrain, a lot this year, calling upon Jesus as he dwells with me, dwells outside me, dwells in each person I meet. And everything I say and share today is rooted in my faith in a benevolent and loving Christ with us, within us, surrounding us, in quiet times and dangerous times, in those who love us, and even in the stranger, the one who is not our friend. At the end of last year's Diocesan Convention, there was such good energy. We were ready to walk in love together. We had been inspired by Canon Anita's sermon about going in a new direction and keeping the faith. We sat in diverse groups of Episcopalians and learned more about our churches, our stories, and our lives. And as your bishop, I felt really good that I knew where we were going, we had plans, and we just had to put one foot in front of the other and walk on in faith. You know, a focus on the three pillars of becoming beloved community that the Episcopal Church had identified in what I viewed as a sensible and rational order. You know, this year on the care of creation, in 2021 with the visit of the presiding bishop on evangelism, and then in 2022, when we knew each other better and trusted one another more, we would engage the challenging and difficult conversation about racial reconciliation. If there is one thing I have learned in the last 12 months that feel like 12 years, it's that while making plans is good, holding them lightly and being able to adapt is critical. As I think you all know, 3 days after convention ended last year, my life radically changed when my son Nate had a massive stroke. I was on a new walk of faith. this time in the valley of the shadow of death. 3 brain surgeries, about 50 total days in the hospital, and a lot of physical, occupational, and speech therapy later. Nate is an ordinary 11-year-old 6th grader at All Saints Episcopal Day School. He's got a big hole in his brain, and there are still a few lingering effects. But thanks to the last surgery, there are no additional risks of strokes, and he's able to do everything he needs to do to grow up, thrive, and be himself. A miracle. Christ to comfort and restore me. So thank you for all the support and love and prayers over the last year. I cannot imagine having gone through it all without the church. In fact, of all the experiences in my life, this past year has been the understanding of why we need church communities. Without being upheld by prayer, I don't know how we would have made it. And thank you for the cards, messages, phone calls, prayer quilts, stuffed animals, care packages containing snacks, relaxation aids, games, books, and in one memorable instance, 3 tiny bottles of whiskey. They all helped us keep going when the idea that Nate would basically now be healthy seemed so unlikely and so fragile. Thank you to the diocesan staff who stepped up to continue the ministry of the church and the diocese while I was either missing or distracted. Thank you to the standing committee and every church and clergy person who had to be patient while we rescheduled everything. Christ in hearts of all that love me. Now, the pandemic began in between Nate's 2nd and 3rd surgeries, and while his health was obviously the dominant influence on my life this year, the pandemic has obviously been the dominant influence on our church's lives. I had never envisioned a circumstance that would cause me to halt public worship. They didn't cover that in baby bishop school. But it was the Christ-like thing to do, a sacrifice rooted in love of our neighbors. Christ in quiet, Christ in danger. I am so proud of every one of our congregations that speedily figured out how to put up worship online and move their Christian education to Zoom and set up telephone trees to connect all those who didn't have access to online offerings. I saw clergy and lay leaders praying the daily office together online. I got to spend more time with clergy, and I got to listen to a lot of your sermons online that I would never have heard otherwise. As the Episcopal Church, we had a lot of theological conversations about the sacraments and how or if we could and should continue them during the pandemic. 26 of our congregations submitted videos about this year in our hashtag #AZEpiscopal2020 video. So I will let you all describe to your fellow Episcopalians what life and ministry has been like during COVID in your area, what learnings and blessings we have had, and what sacrifices and grief we bear. I am very grateful to all the members of the Gathering for Abundant Life Task Force who came together in April, when we anticipated that our regathering would happen in May or June, to put together guidelines for how to safely reopen our churches for worship and ministry. To this date, there are many clergy and lay people in our diocese who have contracted COVID. A number of our members have died in this pandemic. But to the best of my knowledge, no one has caught COVID at one of our churches. That is good news, and good news that I pray will continue in the coming months. And part of that is due to the good and faithful work of that task force. So thank you to Canon Clyde Coons, Kim Kennedy, the Reverend Bruce Jackson, the Reverend Gerardo Brambilla, Dr. Jerry Cato, Dr. Richard Neff, the Reverend Taylor Devine, the Reverend Erica Von Haren, and diocesan staff members Canon Kathy Black, Canon Bill Potts, and the Reverend Canon Anita Braden. About 50 of our congregations have approved Phase 2 plans, and most are in the process of enacting those so that people who are able to gather together can do so for worship. Risk tolerance varies. There are people in our churches who will not be able to safely gather in person until there's a vaccine. And there are other people, often in the same churches, who wish we had never ceased public worship. Thank you to our cathedral for hosting diocesan worship in July and September, and a memorial service for those who have died during the pandemic. I'm also incredibly grateful to our diocesan musicians who have, in the midst of so much sacrifice with our inability to sing safely in church, responded with creativity in gathering virtual choirs for their own weekly worship, and also sharing those recordings for our diocesan memorial service and Thursday night's convention Eucharist. Our COVID-19 numbers are going up again in Arizona. It's a slow rise for now, but as we know from May and June, it can spike very quickly once it gets going. My prayer and sincere hope as your bishop is that we will be able to stay in phase 2 as a diocese without having to go back to phase 1 by county or by the whole state. But if it becomes evident that there is a second wave in the virus, we will do what we need to do to keep people safe. In the meantime, wear a mask, meet outdoors as much as possible, keep distanced, and stay safe. I don't know when this will end, but I know it won't be soon. And I also don't know what the church will look like in the future. There is a gift in having everything stop and being able to build it up again. I know that. It gives us an opportunity to ask questions about what do we want to leave behind? What are some of the things that we have done, that always done, that maybe we can stop doing? And what are the things that we have discovered that are new that we want to continue? What does church membership mean in an online context where people are attending worship from all over the country? How do we handle budgeting when we don't know what we'll be doing and we don't know what giving will look like? We don't know what or if any additional stimulus money will be available, and we don't know when it will end. We survived Holy Week and Easter entirely online. But what about Christmas? I don't know. I do know that Jesus is our ground, and I do know that we are called to be gentle with one another and give each other charity in understanding that we cannot do everything and we cannot satisfy everyone. Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me. As we move into a hybrid model where there is some in-person gathering and continued online presence, this week we received notice that a group of smaller and rural congregations received a grant produced largely by Deacon Robert Hollis and Mary Hovden at St. James Tempe. And so we've received a United Thank Offering grant for almost $25,000 to buy equipment to get 13 of our smaller and rural congregations better able to sustain their online ministries for the long haul. Those congregations are St. James Tempe, Apostles Oro Valley, St. Albans Wickenburg, St. Peter's Casa Grande, St. Paul's Tombstone, St. Stephen's Sierra Vista, St. Stephen's Douglas, St. John's Bisbee, All Saints Safford, St. Philip and St. James Morenci, St. Raphael's Benson, St. Luke's by the Mountain Phoenix, and Trinity Kingman. The Standing Committee established a fund to assist congregations with salaries and benefits at the beginning of the pandemic in anticipation that giving would decrease. To date, only a few congregations have taken advantage of that or needed that support. However, we are hearing more that what congregations need is support for individual members who are facing unemployment or other economic insecurity because of COVID. And so at Eucharist on Thursday, we launched the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund for the Diocese of Arizona. The Neighbor to Neighbor Fund will provide support upon application for church members or those who are served by our congregations. $5,000 has been offered in matching funds through a gift in memory of Bishop Shahan. And so every dollar that is contributed right now will be matched dollar for dollar up to $5,000. The link is in the materials section of the Chime app, and we will be putting together an application form so that people can apply to receive support through this grant. Although the pandemic certainly has dominated our lives this past year, there has been other ministry as well. One of the things that was a goal of mine as your bishop in the first 2 years was to establish relationships around the state of Arizona. I believe in evangelism outside the doors of our churches and believe that we should not hide the light of the gospel or the light of our churches under a bushel basket. Too often, Christianity is portrayed only one way in public. And so I believe it's critical for the Episcopal Church to be visible outside of our church. And I understand my role as your bishop partly to be that visible face of the church. And so one of my goals was to establish relationships with elected and civic leaders, with other churches, and with news organizations. And the pandemic and the work for racial justice has definitely provided the urgent necessity to do so. And I am grateful now that I and our diocese have good relationships with Governor Ducey, with Director Shin of the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry, with Director Fuentes of the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family, with Director Ditmore of the Arizona Housing Department, with Mayor Gallego of Phoenix, and Senators Sinema and McSally in their offices. And we also have ever deeper relationships with other members of the faith community, with the African American Christian Clergy Coalition, the Arizona Faith Network, Valley Interfaith Project, and the judicatory heads of the Lutheran Church, the Methodists, the UCC, the Roman Catholics, Disciples, and along with some new relationships establishing with some of our evangelical and megachurch siblings in Christ. We also have working relationships now with some of our local print and TV journalists. I want to pull out one piece of that relationship and how it has helped to share the gospel. Over the summer during the pandemic, through Valley Interfaith Project, and through the building upon the ministry in prisons of Deacon Kim Kreka and Deacon Gay Romack, we worked with Valley Interfaith Project to meet with Director Shin of the Arizona Department of Corrections, Rehabilitation, and Reentry about the health and safety of inmates in prisons during COVID. Meeting with Director Shin, Director Fuentes, and the governor, and supported by Deacons Martha Seaman and Father Hunter Ruffin of Epiphany Tempe, we were actually able to work with Director Shin to make real substantive progress on how COVID is being handled in our prisons. Inmates are among those most vulnerable to this disease, both because of age, but mainly because of their living situation. They're not able to socially distance, and at the beginning of the pandemic, they weren't allowed to wear masks. Over these months, we have worked to get standardized testing of inmates, working on release policies that those who are released are tested for COVID and know their status before they're released, getting permission for inmates to wear masks, testing for employees, and again, these are building on ministries and relationships that we already have to share the gospel and protect the vulnerable. I am so grateful to everyone who was involved in those conversations and that are continuing this week. We're also further developing our relationship with Arizona State University. The ASU Visiting Neely Professor of Religion and Public Policy, which was funded in part by a grant from the Neely Fund of the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona, has just begun with the appointment of Dr. Colleen Wessel-McCoy. Dr. Wessel-McCoy is an Episcopalian who most recently was teaching at Union Theological Seminary in New York City and will be available to our diocese to teach and lead some events. We've also renewed the Best Skills, Best Churches partnership with ASU. In response to a survey given to past participants, we have increased a proportion of time given to the church response to ASU's presentations on nonprofit management. And we've increased the proportion of each session so that we can quickly put into practice, and added a case study to each session, so we can quickly put into practice the topics covered. We've also combined the clergy and lay programs. And this year, because everything is online, Best Skills, Best Churches will be online, so no one needs to travel. New clergy to the diocese are required to attend, but any church leaders are welcome to sign up, and we particularly encourage lay leaders to do so. More information is available about the program at azdiocese.org. Another relationship I desired to develop as your bishop was with the Diocese of Western Mexico. I invited Bishop Ricardo Gomez Osnaya of the Diocese of Western Mexico to be one of my co-consecrators at my consecration because I wanted to extend the hand of neighborliness to a diocese that borders our own and a diocese that in some ways is not that dissimilar from our own. It is also a bilingual diocese containing congregations that worship in Spanish and congregations that worship in English. Bishop Gomez and I have been getting to know one another over the last 18 months. He joined us for our border ministry conference last year and is assisting us with making our Cruzando Fronteras steering committee truly bilingual and bicultural. In late 2019, we began a conversation about what a companion diocese relationship would look like between our dioceses, and the result is a resolution being proposed and considered later today. Their diocese is on a journey of church planting and evangelism, building up from 2 English-speaking congregations, and then 3 parishes, 17 missions, and additional church plants and preaching stations, which are all in Spanish. This is a partnership for the building up of both dioceses and the enriching of our common life in Christ. Last year, I created 2 new staff positions, the Canon for Care of Creation and the Missioner for Border Ministries. Despite the pandemic's interference, I am so pleased with how those 2 positions have flourished in our diocese. Canon Pam Hyde's work is evident in this convention and at the Provincial Deacons Conference last August. And the Reverend David Chavez's ministry as Missioner for Border Ministry has helped to guide the steering committee of Cruzando Fronteras towards greater institutional strength and transparency about finances and roles and responsibilities. And he has been a leading voice for migrants across the Episcopal Church, preaching in our congregations here in Arizona and leading book studies and preaching groups among our clergy and lay leaders. He's also working with the Reverend John Caleb Collins, the new vicar of our congregations in Bisbee and Douglas, to determine what God is calling our diocese to do for border ministry in the Agua Prieta, Naco, and Douglas areas. This year we said goodbye, mostly, to Canon Jesse Villegas. His family had the impeccable timing of opening a coffee shop, The Porch, in Prescott on March 1st, 2020. When you're in Prescott, go buy coffee, a lot of coffee, at The Porch. Jesse is still a dear friend to the diocese and to Chapel Rock, and put together the AZ Episcopal 2020 video that you will see shortly. With his departure, I combined the oversight for children and youth in the diocese into one position, now held by the Reverend Canna Jana Sadine, who was ordained a transitional deacon this summer and will be priested in 2021. She is now joined on a part-time basis by Deanna Fair, our summer camp manager. Deanna has now ably managed a virtual summer camp, making as much lemonade out of the lemons of the pandemic as possible. And my hope and prayer is that 2021 will be different for Chapel Rock. There is a possibility in our budget this year, our financial statement of mission, for a half-time bookkeeping position for 2021. The Diocese of Arizona has not completed an audit since 2015. Canon Bill Potts and Treasurer Susie Mortensen have been working hard and bringing in extra support this year to try to catch up on the information from 2016 and 2017 that is making it impossible for us to do the more recent audits until we do the older audits. But we're still not quite where we want to be, partly because all of the time spent on PPP loans for the diocese and our congregations, which was time well spent. And Bill's availability to you all to help with your congregational financial issues means he isn't able to give 100% of himself to diocesan finances. This is the second diocese I have gone through that had a similar issue. In New York, we had a similar issue with the backlog of financial administration. I believe that good administration is good pastoral care. And so I believe that with Canon Bill and with Susie, that this half-time bookkeeping position will be a way of getting back on top of things so we can move forward without the past hanging around our neck like a millstone. Now, in my vision and plan for life of our diocese, I anticipated having a deep conversation in the diocese in 2022 about racial justice and reconciliation, a conversation that would happen, in my mind, after I knew the diocese better, after our clergy and lay leaders had been through our new anti-racism training and established a common language for discussing race and racism, and developed the self-reflection and spiritual stamina that is required for fruitful discussion of racial injustice. Well, the last year has consistently been a year of shaking me out of the naivete of making orderly plans. But the last year has also been one confronting me personally with how privileged I am that I think I can intentionally schedule time to discuss racism, rather than having the reality of racism be something that I must live with and experience every day. Sometimes racism is predictable, but a lot of the time it is unscheduled, out of the blue, inescapable, and it can be deadly. This is the part of this address that I have written and rewritten the most. I think differently about racism now than I did 20 or 30 years ago. It has been a journey for me, all while believing that all people are created equal. That hasn't changed for me. But I used to think of racism as the actions of a few truly evil people. And then in college, when I was working in the inner city, I saw inequality of opportunity in education. Later, I was the victim of a crime, and I was treated so well by law enforcement. A few months later, in a group therapy session, I met a Black woman who had been the victim of an almost identical crime in the same city with the same detective assigned to investigate it. And she was treated so badly by him. The only difference was the color of our skin. In the intervening years, I have been blessed with patient friends of color who have shared their stories and experiences, and I have made the effort to read and learn and engage in conversation and dialogue and relationships so that I can better understand the experiences of people who look differently than I do. And I no longer believe that racism is just the actions of a few truly evil people. I believe racism is a sin. I believe racism is present in just about every institution in our nation, in our law enforcement, our education system, our housing, our unemployment, and even our church. As a white woman, I observed racism firsthand in most of those areas, and so I am on a journey of learning how and when to intervene, how and when to step back so leaders of color can take center stage. The murder of George Floyd and the subsequent protests for justice and the continued revelations about the unequal application of police violence against Black and brown people, even in our own state, have required an urgent, faithful response and engagement. This is a biblical issue. Jesus, in his context, said very clearly that everyone is a child of God, and every life matters to his Father in heaven. But he also highlighted, particularly, lives that were considered less than other people's lives. He highlighted the importance of Samaritans. He highlighted the importance of the poor. He highlighted the importance of the woman caught in adultery and other people who were not acceptable or were not part of the heart of his current time. And he lifted those lives up, and so we are called to do as well. I am so proud of the way in which many of our congregations have responded by offering the Episcopal Church's Sacred Ground curriculum in their congregations, providing space for difficult conversations about racism, and taking action to make our congregations more diverse and equitable. I am thankful to the Arizona chapter of the Union of Black Episcopalians for their help in putting together our Vigil for the Dignity of Black Lives in July, and everyone who came to our Bishop's Book Club on white fragility last summer and who is planning to attend the next Bishop's Book Club that begins this Thursday on Caitlin Curtis's book, Native: Identity, Belonging, and Rediscovering God. What I have discovered this year is that for many white Episcopalians in Arizona, This is the first time you are having these conversations, which means we have not yet built up what I described earlier as the spiritual stamina necessary to engage at every level towards racial justice. Back to that burden, Christ in mouth of friend and stranger. In 2000, 20 years ago, the General Convention passed Resolution B049, which called for making mandatory all clergy and lay leaders to have anti-racism training. My understanding is that the Diocese of Arizona has required this for clergy, and it has been available to lay people, but it has never until now required it for lay leaders. Last fall, I commissioned our Diocesan Anti-Racism Committee to start fresh and develop a new curriculum for anti-racism training. They have done so, basing it upon the 4 stages of the Episcopal Church's Becoming Beloved community: telling the truth, practicing the way, repairing the breach, proclaiming the dream. The Reverend Monica Whitaker, one of the co-chairs of our Anti-Racism Committee, will be making a presentation about the new curriculum later today. Earlier this year, the Standing Committee passed a new policy that does require our lay leaders, including vestry members, committee chairs, and lay staff, to go through the new training by mid-2020. This is critical work. It is difficult work. It is the work of the gospel, and we will do it together. And we do this work in the midst of, I don't remember how many days it is, a few days before an election. Now, I have never lived in a swing state before. Wow, this is a radically different experience of election than I've ever had in California or New York. Thursday's night sermon, I think, addressed this more substantively and thoroughly, basically saying we are all in the same boat. A month or so ago, I wrote in the epistle an encouragement for all of our members to read Romans chapter 12, verses 9 through 21 daily as we approach the election. I have been doing so almost every day. I find that as the days go by, different verses pop out, different images are newly relevant, and so I will leave you today with the words of the Apostle Paul to the church in Rome. May they guide and govern us in the coming days and weeks. Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And to tell the story of this year in our diocese, I invite the powers that be to play the AZ Episcopal 2020 video.
now offer outdoor Holy Eucharist for up to 10 people twice a week and are looking at doing the same with our Casablanca Chapel community in Sonoita, Arizona. The church building closed, but our understanding of how we live into and out of our faith continues and deepens.
We have harnessed technology to be able to reach beyond our doors and beyond our boundaries. And that is what we have done this year. And it took a pandemic for us to do that. But now we are live streaming to both Facebook and to YouTube. And we are also doing podcasts, and we are doing Zooming. We are doing so much. And what I would tell us for the future is the church is not this building, it's people. And we have come a long way.
Since late March, when St. Luke's closed its doors to protect parishioners from the pandemic, the food pantry has fed 1,630 moms, dads, kids, and grandparents. St. Luke's Food Pantry continues to meet the growing needs of our community. It has outgrown the small space it's working out of now and is being given a larger, dedicated space in the church to continue our mission, keeping families fed through hope, love, and the generosity of our church and community.
Campus Ministries is important to me because it's given me leadership opportunities in a community during these times.
Campus ministry during COVID has been really helpful in allowing me to stay connected with God when all of the churches in my area are still shut down due to the pandemic. It's nice to be able to log in and see familiar places and still have that connection with God and with those people.
I'm Father Dave with St. Peter's Episcopal Church in Casa Grande, and we're going to tell you about what we've been doing during the time of pandemic and where we're going.
We adopted an electronic format early in the pandemic. Our last services at the church were held February 20th. We began gathering on Zoom with morning prayer each Sunday and alternated between evening prayer on Tuesdays and Compline and a Story for Children on Thursdays. The Daughters of the King has also continued their ministry of prayer, service, and evangelism, and the congregation of St. Peter's knows they can turn to them for spiritual assistance during this difficult time. I feel strongly that Jesus' love has been with us during this difficult time, and that in many ways our faith has been strengthened.
It's hard to put into words just how much the people of St. A's love one another and love the community surrounding the parish, and what a deep grief and sadness it has been to not be able to be physically present to one another during this difficult time. St. Augustine's is a truly intergenerational parish, and it has all the beauty and messiness that you would expect to see when people of all stages and ages come together to share life and to do ministry. One of the ways we have helped kids and their adults to stay in touch from a safe distance is through something we have called Kids Connecting Through Crafts. After seeing what a hit our Pentecost headband kits were and hearing how much fun children had making them, a group of parents collaborated to come up with ideas and materials to put together our first crafting kit. It was a big Ziploc bag stuffed with 4 weeks worth of crafts all ready to go. After the kits were distributed, we met once a week over Zoom to do the craft and to spend time together.
We at St. Albans in Wickenburg have taken COVID-19 head on by developing new ways to worship and bring the church to the people. We've instituted morning prayer on every Sunday, which goes out Facebook Live. We also post it to our website, and an email goes out with a YouTube link so that we cover all the bases and mediums that we can think of.
Hi, I'm Lynn Perkins from Church of the Epiphany in Flagstaff. During our time of physical separation, we have created 3 new small groups, 2 for the Sacred Ground series, with another one beginning in October, and the third, a group looking at ways to draw closer to God. I feel Jesus is calling us to more and more of these small groups. In fact, making it a central part of our new normal for Epiphany.
The Church of the Transfiguration has been so blessed during the pandemic. Lots of people have stepped up to help keep our church active and vibrant. The Altar Guild continues to come in and set up for the services and clean up afterwards. Our social media team has worked unceasingly to keep everyone up to date and involved in the church. People have contributed to keep the church financially stable and to help the needy. The book club has remained active, and occasionally some of the book authors have actually joined in their meetings. People have visited other parishioners while staying socially distant. Some church members, led by Bill Robinson, have joined with other church communities and the Council on Native American Ministries to provide relief supplies to the Native American community. Volunteers have frequently led our weekly prayers. Prayers have been offered for members of the church who are sick and others, and many who are sick that we've prayed for have recovered. We've been so fortunate because most of our parishioners have stayed safe and healthy.
St. Anthony's Choir may not be able to sing in harmony due to this virus, but St. Anthony's Choir positively continues to sing. Each week with Joe on the piano, Rosemary on the organ, and one vocalist, we do the hymns and the Alleluia for this week's upcoming tape service. And to keep as many choir members involved as we can, the vocalist rotates through each service.
From St. Andrew's in Tucson. During this time of restrictions, I felt all the church's functions in my life being ripped away. No services, no singing, no gathering together for Eucharist. So how to express God's love for us? We pray the morning and evening office over Zoom together, so we can see each other and know that others are praying with us and for us.
Caring for each other, we've been using primarily phone calls to touch base with one another, as well as texting and email. And we've made sure that if anybody needs anything, errands run, or if they're looking for something they can't find, we've got a way to canvass our congregation and help provide for those things. And then how we've been able to continue to share the love of Jesus in our community and in the world, we've done a variety of things over the months. We have a program that we've continued during this time called Groceries for You. And we give out grocery cards to some of our local grocery stores for people that find themselves in need of trying to make ends meet. And we've got a program set up, and we've been able to keep that going over these last few months. We also have had support groups in our facilities, and we've been able to, with the restrictions of 10 or fewer and wearing your mask and staying socially distant and sanitizing, we've been able to provide our spaces for some support groups, and they've been very appreciative of that.
Hello to all of you from Holbrook, Arizona, St. George's Episcopal Church. Boy, have we been busy during this coronavirus. We decided to update the old church, putting on new shingles, repairing any old injuries. We got a new door. It's here, it's just waiting to be put on. The trim's been good. But one of our blessings here is the landscape. On top of all the work that's happening to the church, we've done a lot of work on the landscape. And I will tell you, this has become a place of solace and a place of prayer and just a beautiful place to be. We're growing squash, and we have offered the squash to anybody who asks for some. And you can see it's taking over the fence. It's amazing. And the flowers, everything's looking good over here. Along with the new cross. Now I have to tell you, the old cross is inside that new one.
Even though it seems that this experience will never end, it will end. There will be some changes to the congregation as you step back into a less restricted time. But this time will affect you all. Some will be more aware of their mortality. Others will be more committed to striving to be as healthy as possible. Listen well to one another, because some will share valuable new insights. But most of all, don't give up. Accept the help of those who extend it to you if you need it. Cultivate patience. It is something we can always grow in, and always see the beauty of God's presence throughout creation, even the human part of creation, which can make itself unattractive at times. Thank you.
Thank you for this banquet of love, this feast of joy, this miracle of common purpose in Christ. Amen. Now go, connect and care, and take action aimed at what is right.
I think that what we have done is relearned something that we've always already known, which is, cleanliness is next to godliness after all, right? I mean, look at it. Everybody's taking much more care in washing their hands and making sure they're not being in other people's spaces and giving people room. And it's like, we are now being more compassionate toward each other than we ever have before. Think about it. I mean, I haven't been sick. I've still been out I've been working. I work every day. And I've never been sick. Why? Because everybody's taking care. We really did need to learn this lesson. And it was a painful way to learn it. But you know what? We are learning it, and it's going to be awesome in what we can do in the future because of it.
Greetings, everyone. This is Steve Keplinger at Grace St. Paul's in Tucson. Happy to have a chance to say hi to everyone at Diocesan Convention. Just a couple things about how we've done during this crazy time. Probably our most difficult decision was how or if to run our food pantry and our shower ministry and all of our social services programs during this time. But with a lot of creative thinking, we came up with safe ways to do that and to care for people one at a time in our main hall. And that's worked out extremely well, and we've been able to continue to serve people. That's probably been the most important thing for us. As far as the blessings go, our live streaming has just been a real boon in some ways. We've been able to reach people that we've never been able to reach before, and that's a great thing. People from all over the country and some folks in different parts of the world have been tuning in, and that's a good thing. We've been able to live stream in church, which is also has been very helpful for our congregation and been a really good thing for us. Like the rest of the world, I think the positives of this are that we see imprisonment and slavery and racism and other isms like we've never been seen before. And I think we're much more compassionate and we're protesting much more on those fronts, and that's been a great thing. And finally, the congregation gets to make fun of my hair every week now, and that's a really positive. Blessings to all of you. See you soon.
Hello, Diocesan Convention. Welcome from St. Matthew's in Chandler. You know, this has been a tough year for many people, but as I look back, what I see is the good that our church did here in this community, from supporting migrant farm workers, collecting diapers for Cruzando Fronteras, filling back-to-school backpacks for foster children at Helen's Hope Chest, sending work crews to Habitat for Humanity, or our ongoing support of Matthew's Crossing Food Bank, our daughter organization. This church has made a habit of giving back. It's so easy to be overwhelmed by the problems of the world that we can forget that each of us really can make a difference. I think our charge is to look around us and ask ourselves, what can I do right here, right now? We can't control what happens in Washington, D.C., and we can't control what happens at the United Nations, but we can have an impact on the people that we meet every day and the communities that we find ourselves a part of. I want to take a moment to thank the people of this church and of all the churches around Arizona, churches like yours, who put their hands to work in service to others this year. God bless you for bearing fruit that will be gathered into the storehouse in the kingdom of God.
We have been shown clearly during this time what we must do from here out. We must love one another, no matter what. We must work together to put the world back together after our common humanity has been amply illustrated by the food insecurity, job insecurity, atrocities toward immigrants all over the world, racial unrest, and death. These problems are worldwide. All of God's people are suffering. We can commit to a kingdom of love, a kingdom of God.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Let us go forth.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to God. No. 1, 2. They. My grandfather was Jewish. I'm sorry.
May God be...
Thanks. You're supposed to.
No, I'm do the hallelujah.
No. We both do it together.
All right.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. Let us go forth. I did it again. We also invite you to join us in the virtual coffee hour today. We'll be showing 2 videos from Bishop.
Let us be mindful of the dead, especially we pay for Lowen's. Sorry, let me start again. 5.
You're praying for the dead. Stop laughing.
5, 6.
Thanks be.
I thought I just did the
No,
hallelujah.
we do. Thanks be to God. Alleluia,
Okay.
alleluia,
Maybe
alleluia.
third time it'll work. Let's go.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Canon Timothy Dombeck, and I'm the rector here at Advent Episcopal Church in Sun City West. Advent is the hosting venue for Diocesan Convention this year of 2020. The longest year anybody watching has ever lived. We're delighted to be a host to Bishop Redall and her staff, and we hope that you enjoy the convention coming from this location. One of the real unexpected blessings of 2020 has been how the giving has been sustained through this pandemic. People who are regular estimators of giving have continued to pay. People who don't estimate have still continued to give at the level they're used to giving. Of course, we're missing the benefit of the plate, people who visit church and put money in the offering plate, but the fact that more people are using our digital giving through our website, and other people are using the payments method on their bank to send in their gifts to Advent. I don't like to call that bill pay because what we give to God through the work of the church should never be considered a bill. It's a gift. It's given out of gratitude for all of God's gifts in our life. So the generous giving has still continued throughout 2020, even though we haven't been to church since March 8.
So well done, everyone. Thank you, Jesse Villegas, for putting it together. Thank you to every congregation who supplied video. This video will be available on our YouTube channel at noon today, and we are working on figuring out some of the videos that were submitted were really sort of like self-contained, well-edited videos that we were only able to use parts of. We're going to find ways of getting those out to the diocese as a whole and encourage you to use those videos on your website. So please, we'll look forward to seeing your videos again and again and again. Thank you all so much. We are now going to move forward to elections. And so I call upon Mary Margaret Sprinkle, who is the chair of the nominating committee. Mary Margaret.
Thank you, Bishop. As everyone knows, the information for nominees was printed in the October issue of the Arizona Episcopalian, beginning on page 6. The first call for election is for the Secretary to Convention. It's to elect one person for a 1-year term. We currently have no nominees. Is there a nomination from the floor for this position?
I recognize Dave English, who just raised his hand. Dave put his...
Hi, this is Dave English from All Saints, and I nominate Susan McCann for Convention Secretary for next year. She is the junior warden currently at All Saints.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan McCann, do you accept the nomination? Is she on this video?
Yes, I accept the nomination. Thank you. Are there any other nominations from the floor? All right, I think then we will close nominations for secretary.
Okay, so I call upon our registrar. Kathy, we are voting now, right? We'll do all the voting after everyone's nominated. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. It's all weird this year. So carry on, Mary Margaret.
Definitely, thank you. Next, we have the elections for standing committee. The first role is for the clerical order. will elect 2 people for a 3-year term. Current nominees include the Reverend David Hedges and the Reverend Timothy True. Are there any nominations from the floor?
Yes, hello. I nominate the Reverend Scott Deasy, who serves as deacon at the Church of the Epiphany Flagstaff, to the Standing Committee Clerical Order.
Thank you.
Scott, I've already talked to you, but could you please confirm verbally that you're willing to serve?
I am very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations from the floor? Okay, we'll close nominations for the clerical order. Next, we'll move to the lay order for the standing committee. We will be electing 2 people for a 3-year term. Current nominees include Canon Elisa Derrick, Canon Clyde Coons, and Michael Saylor. Are there any nominations from the floor?
Looks like there are not any raised hands.
Okay, so we will close nominations for the lay order for the standing committee. Next, we'll move to the disciplinary board. First, we'll start with the clerical order. We are to elect 2 people for this order. Current nominees include the Reverend Gary Nicolosi and the Reverend Taylor Devine. Are there any nominations from the floor? Okay, so we'll close nominations for the clerical order for the disciplinary board. And then for the lay order, we're to elect 1 person. And the current nominees include Douglas Cole. Are there any nominations from the floor for the laity order? All right, we'll close nominations for the laity order. Thank you.
So I believe now we are ready to vote, and we are going to do so using polls again. And so there will be a slide. If you can put yourself onto speaker view rather than, what's the other one? Gallery view. Let's pick one. There's going to be a PowerPoint slide up that will show you whether to vote for sort of A, B, or C, and which person each letter is. So the first one should be easy because there's 1 person running for 1 position. So that will be the election for convention secretary. So let's go back to, there we go. Whoop. There we go. So we will elect 1 person to a 1-year term. So if we may have the first poll, you have a choice of A or A. Okay, we're moving on to the next poll. So for standing committee in the clerical order, there are 3 candidates to elect 2 positions. If you wish to vote for the Reverend Canon David Hedges, you vote A. For the Reverend Timothy True, you vote B. For the Reverend Scott Deasy, you vote C. So A, B, or C, and Scott Deasy is C. Kim Krucka, I see your hand waving. Can you unmute Kim Krucka?
The poll only lets us vote for one.
You need to vote for two.
We can't.
All right, thank you for clarifying that, Kim. So what I'm going to do is we are going to do this poll twice. And so the first time we do the poll, vote for one of the candidates that you wish to vote for. We will close that poll, and then we will do the very same poll again, and then vote for the second candidate that you wish to vote for. So everyone will have an opportunity to vote for 2 candidates. And then we will combine those to understand who has the most, which 2 candidates have the most votes. So let's put can we start over and do the first poll again? So we're going to start over. So this is the clerical order where we are electing 2 people. Vote for one of the candidates that you wish to vote for in this poll. And then we will do a second poll, and you can vote for the second candidate. Are we ready for the second poll? All right, we're going to put it up again. Now, I note in the chat there are questions about, you could, in theory, vote for the same candidate twice. This is a church. We're going to put it on your honor that you need to vote for a different candidate in this poll and that we are going to trust you. There is, this is not our ideal, having an online convention. This is one of the ways in which it is less than ideal, but we're going to trust that you're going to do this faithfully and honestly. Okay, so again, it's David Hedges is A, the Reverend Timothy True is B, and Scott Deasy is C. All right, we're asking for clarification from the Chancellor and parliamentarian. Yeah. So I am reaching out to both the chancellor and the parliamentarian. Okay, so I'm hanging up on Austin. So I have consulted with both the chancellor and the parliamentarian about the uniqueness of the situation. I also have the results from the 2 polls. And so per the consultation with the parliamentarian and the chancellor, in this instance, we are going to go with the results of those 2 polls as being the best we can do and definitive in this unique year. And so the winners, I don't want to use the winners, those who were elected to the standing committee in the clerical order and received the most votes were the Reverend Canon David Hedges and the Reverend Deacon Scott Deasy. So Scott and David have been elected to standing committee in the clerical order. We will use the same polling method of doing the poll twice for the election of lay members to the standing committee, which we will do now. And so once again, you are on your honor to vote for one candidate in the first poll and a second candidate in the second poll. Okay, the first poll has been completed, and now we will have the second poll for standing committee in the lay order. Vote for candidates Derrick, Coons, or Seiler. Please vote for a different candidate than you did in the first poll. All right, after those two polls, I declare candidates Derrick and candidate Seiler elected to standing committee in the lay order. We'll move on to the call for election of members of the disciplinary board. In this case, because we have two candidates for two positions, I will ask that we just do a single poll and vote for the candidate, and we will accept that they are both going to be elected. All right, I declare candidates Nicolosi and Devine elected to the disciplinary board in the clerical order. And our last election for this section is the disciplinary board for the lay order. Elect one person, and there is one choice. I declare candidate Cole elected to the disciplinary board in the lay order. We are now going to take a break. The convention will Oh, okay, and I declare, for secretary, I declare candidate McCann elected as secretary. We are going to take a break. We will reconvene at 11:40 a.m., which is in 13 minutes, and we will begin discussion then of the financial statement of mission. Thank you for your patience, and we will see you again you can stay on the Zoom, but we will begin again at 11:40. Good morning, everyone. Calling you back into order. During the break, we took a look at the balloting, and we took a look and realized that we believe that we need to revote. So as the chair of this convention, I am declaring the elections of standing committee in the lay order and the clerical order invalid. And I would ask parliamentarian Austin Kerr to read the chapter or the relevant portion of the canons. So please unmute Austin Kerr.
All right. Hello. Sorry about that. According to the rules of the Robert's Rules of Order, if on any report of the inspections of election, it should appear that no valid election has been made in respect to any of the offices to be filled, the polls shall again be opened for further voting until all offices are filled, or until the convention shall otherwise order. So with that, we need to have a revote. So.
Thank you, Austin. We have also managed to reconfigure the polls so that you can vote for two candidates at the same time. So we are now going to vote for the election of members to the standing committee in the clerical order. Please elect two candidates. A is the Reverend Canon David Hedges, B is the Reverend Timothy True, and C is the Reverend Scott Deasy. Please vote for two, and only two. Okay, that poll has ended. We will now do our second poll, which is for standing committee in the lay order. You may vote for two candidates of Lisa Derrick, Clyde Coons, and Michael Seiler. And there is the poll, so please elect two. So despite the fact that it says single choice and multiple choice, please vote for two candidates of Lisa, Clyde, and Michael. Okay, so the polls have been closed and the results are in. In the clerical order for standing committee, candidates Hedges and Deasy are elected. In the lay order for standing committee, candidates Derrick and Coons are elected. So that's candidates Hedges and Deasy in the clerical order and candidates Derrick and Coons in the lay order. I now call upon the presentation of the 2021 financial statement of mission with Susie Mortensen, the treasurer of the Diocese of Arizona.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning. Thanks to all of you who attended yesterday's workshop. Today, I'll be presenting a shortened version of yesterday's presentation. So some of this might look a little bit familiar, but I'll try to go through it as quickly as I can. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, get rid of the polls. There we go. Okay. And there we go. Okay. So the 2021 financial statement of mission was published in the Arizona Episcopalian on pages 12 and 13. So, we call it a statement of mission because it's the financial support that behind what the diocese mission is for 2021, which of course is to support you and your churches. And I think it's important that we understand that this is more than a budget. The numbers that we are reviewing today reflect the mission of the diocese as we work to serve our congregations, our communities, and to support outreach. It tells the story through the numbers of how we are working to build the body of Christ right here in Arizona. But before we get into the 2021 plan, I'd like to take just a brief moment to highlight some of the things that the Diocesan finance team has been able to accomplish this year with assistance and support from the bishop, the finance committee, and the standing committee. As with all of you, the impact of COVID-19 has caused numerous shifts in how we fulfill our obligation to serve our congregations and communities. And so we have the finance team met and we discerned and we took a number of actions, including with the approval of the standing committee and at the urging of the bishop, we established an emergency loan fund to assist churches who were struggling due to closures because of the pandemic. We used our purchasing power to secure masks, sanitizers, and other cleaning supplies to help our congregations reopen safely. And on behalf of churches, we applied to receive 4 months of pension payment relief for clergy pension payments from the church pension group. We hosted a handful of webinars to direct churches to resources that were available to them. And then we applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, or a PPP loan, from the Small Business Administration through the CARES Act. Our loan included the diocese, the cathedral, Chapel Rock, and just under 40 other churches and programs that we process payroll for. The total loan that we were approved for was $1,375,000. And with that, we were able to fund 2.5 months of payroll and a fair amount of employer paid benefits, such as health insurance and pension. These funds are considered revenue to our churches, but at the direction of Bishop Rettel and with discussion with the standing committee, we determined that this revenue would not be accessible for mission share. Now, I heard yesterday that a number of churches had in fact paid mission share on their loan proceeds. And so if any of your churches did this, please reach out to Canon Bill Potts at the finance office, and he will work with you to work out those refunds. So before the end of the year, though, we will be applying for forgiveness for this loan, which is really a basic tenet of what the Paycheck Protection Program is all about. And finally, in addition to submitting our own loan, we assisted many other churches with submitting their loans. All right, moving on to the proposed mission plan for 2021. We have a number of key objectives for 2021, and one of the biggest one of our biggest priorities is to support our churches and missions as they grow Christ Church, and to address the needs of the community by continuing to support efforts of our border ministry, our care of creation, and our social and justice ministries. In addition, to keep the church thriving, we're providing educational opportunities, raising up new leaders, supporting our children, our youth, and our adults. So we recognize that there's a lot of uncertainty still about the continued impact of COVID-19 in 2021, so we are going to proceed cautiously. Revenue is projected to be $3,915,000 this year. This is a decrease of $149,650 from 2020. Mission share is projected to decrease from $3 million in the 2020 plan to $2,925,029,000 in the 2021 plan. There's no change to the mission share percentage. It remains to be 16.9%. So when we looked at mission share, we carefully evaluated what the trends were in 2018, 2019, and through June of 2020. And in fact, I've taken a brief look at how it has been coming in through September of 2020. We were particularly concerned about the impact of COVID-19 on our churches, and we expected a drop in donations. And we did see some declines in some of our churches, and in other churches, donations and other income seemed to hold fairly steady. So we don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, but it is likely that it will continue for quite some time. And we may see additional financial stress on congregations as well as the diocese. If our projections for revenue don't hold, we will likely have to make adjustments as we actually live through 2021. In our other income line, we have a net decrease of $18,600. Grant revenue is decreasing by $25,000, and we also have a handful of miscellaneous adjustments, which added $6,400. If grants become available and are in sync with our objectives, we will certainly apply for them. Support from restricted funds, primarily the Neely Fund and the Rural Fund, are decreasing from $441,500 in 2020 to $385,000 in 2021. The Neely Fund is being repurposed and redirected to support new missions, and the rural funds were exhausted in 2020. So this is how it looks with in a graph. You can see that the big blue chunk there is the revenue we receive from mission share. It represents about 75% of the total revenue of the diocese. And then the other sources of funds that I've mentioned, the Alleluia Fund, income, endowment, all of those are represented also. So on to planned expenditures. Expenditures are also planned to be $3,915,000, also a decrease of $149,650 from the 2020 plan. So as you looked at the proposed plan in the Episcopalian, you saw a number of increases and decreases in the various line items, and I'd like to talk through some of those. Ministries and programs is decreasing by $43,500 in 2020 from 2020. In the clergy support line, we have a net decrease of $12,500. This is caused by two items. First of all, the clergy placement project is decreasing by $25,000 as we have fewer clergy in this program. However, we have more seminarians and are providing more seminarian assistance, so that is increasing by $12,500. The Native American line is decreasing by $4,000 at the direction of the program director. Hispanic ministry is decreasing by $11,000, but actually it's being, though that decrease is just being moved to other lines within the budget, and I'll talk about that later. In other programs, we have a decrease in mission share rebate due to the decrease in mission share revenue, but the amount of the rebate is remaining at 1.25%. So I'm going to look at diocesan clergy and compensation and diocesan staff compensation together, because frankly, that's how it makes the most sense. So as Bishop Ruddle already reviewed staff changes and proposed additions, I think I could just share with you what the financial impact is. As Bishop Ruddle mentioned, Janice Undine has been ordained, and so she moves from the diocesan staff line to the diocesan clergy line, and all of her related expenses, her benefits, her and her travel costs, those move with her, and that's probably the biggest. That's the biggest reason why you see a shift between those two lines. We talked about Jesse taking off and trying to start a coffee shop, and please buy coffee from him. And that was a decrease of 67,300. We added the summer camp manager, which added 24,000. Our health insurance probably was a little overstated in 2020 because we don't really actually know our rates when we're finalizing this budget. We finalized the financial plan in August, and the rates aren't known until October. And when they actually came in 2020, they were a little bit lower. So we think that same decrease will carry forward into the 2021 plan. And finally, the bishop mentioned the proposed part-time accountant when we've included 35,000 for that. In governance and polity, this is decreasing by $20,000. This is where we have recorded our mission share, our assessment to the Episcopal Church. Based on our review, we expect a slight decrease of $10,000 there. In 2020, we had 335,000 planned for this, and in 2021, we think it will be closer to 325,000. We also have a decrease in funding for the Lambeth Conference. We typically set aside $10,000 a year for this, and we think it's already adequately funded. We don't have to fund it again this year. Mission in our congregations is increasing by 26,000. This is a combination of a number of things. Some of the support for our rural churches has moved to this line this year because we don't have the donor restricted funds for it anymore. So we're not going to let those guys go. We're going to continue to support them, but it's just going to be in a different line on our in our financial statements. Support for Santa Maria salary is $8,000. As I mentioned on the revenue slide, not the revenue slide, I mentioned in missions that we are decreasing Hispanic line by 11,000. This is where part of that landed. And finally, the health insurance for the Santa Maria La Trinidad is also lower in 2021. I think mostly in part because the coverage level changed, that we had a person who had family coverage and I think now is at a single coverage, as well as the decrease in rates. In our donor restricted funds, this is going down by 92,625. In the Alleluia Fund, we provide support for certain churches as they are being brought up, and as they gain ground and are more financially strong, we decrease that support. And so this is all planned reductions based on preset plans. And the same is true for the Neely Fund. There are certain programs that we've been supporting that are being reduced as they gain their own financial foothold. In the rural funds, as I mentioned, this has been exhausted. So there's no more donor restricted funds. And so we see that reduction there. All right, this is my favorite slide because this shows the totality of the funds that we are expending for congregations, communities, and outreach. Of our almost $4 million budget, we are spending almost 3 million or 61.3% of our total revenue on supporting our congregations and communities. So 31% is going to mission in our congregations, 18% to children and youth. And you can see 13% is going to the Episcopal Church because a lot of that money is being used for outreach and mission and driving mission also. 8.8% is coming back to all of you in the form of mission share rebate, 9% to support our Hispanic, Native American, border and social justice ministries, and so on. And finally, this is how the total picture looks. Again, you see that big blue chunk is the support for congregations, communities, and outreach at 61.3%. And then the remaining is primarily going towards supporting diocesan operations and staff. All right. I went through that pretty quick. So in addition to being the treasurer for the diocese, I am also a voting delegate of my home parish. And so in order to get the discussion going and questions being answered, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion now. Therefore, Bishop Rattle, I move that the 2021 financial statement of mission be approved. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Susie. And is there a second? I call upon Daniel Tanamonico to be unmuted. Unmute yourself, Dan. Or the magic hand in the sky allow Dan to unmute himself. All right. I see a second in the chat by Father Gerardo Rambilla, so I'm going to accept. Oh, wait, no, Dan is unmuted.
Yes, I second the motion.
Thank you, Dan. Congratulations on getting through Zoom. So we have a motion and a second. Now, for discussion of the financial statement of mission, I see people are starting to raise their hands. We do ask that you use the raise hand function to be able to speak. In order to find the raise hand function, click on participants, and at the bottom of the list of participants, there's a button that says raise hand. We practiced this yesterday. And I will go in the order in which you are on my screen. Once you have spoken, please lower your hand to make it less confusing. You have 2 minutes to speak, and we will be keeping track of that. And so I would ask the Church of the Epiphany Tempe to be unmuted right now. So you have 2 minutes to speak.
You're unmuted. It won't take me 2 minutes. I rise to support the racial conciliation information that you provided in your powerful sermon this morning, Bishop. But I continue to want to raise to make sure that people are aware that in this budget, specifically Native Americans and Hispanics and something called border and social justice were recognized and provided support. But in no place in this budget do I see anything for African Americans. So I want that on the record, please.
Thank you, Stanley. I appreciate that, and it is on the record. So Carol Tees. Carol, you're good to go.
I'm sorry, I must have punched it in earlier. I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Joan Abraham, please allow Joan to unmute herself.
I'm sorry, just like her, I did the wrong thing. I don't have anything to say.
Kathy Cheatham, are we going to be 3 for 3? Please unmute Kathy Cheatham. Kathy, do you have something to say? Okay, please unmute Carter Wilson.
St. Peter's Litchfield Park. I call for the question.
I'm sorry, Carter, I didn't hear your question.
I call for the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we are going to use the raise hand function to respond to the call to question. So calling the question means ending the debate and moving on to vote on the financial state of mission. If you would like to end debate and vote on the financial statement of mission, please raise your hand and we will look to see if there's a majority of hands raised in the participant list. And there is, well, wait. And there is a majority of hands raised. Please put your hands down, and we will move on to a vote on the financial statement of mission for 2021, which will be a poll on your screen. All right, the 2021 financial statement of mission has been approved. Thank you, convention, and thank you, Susie Mortensen. Yay. I miss applause. I miss the sort of collective joy of these things. No, that's just sad sounding. I now introduce the Reverend Monica Whitaker for a presentation on the new anti-racism training and the work of the Anti-Racism Committee. Monica, the floor is yours. Monica is still muted. Can we unmute Monica or give her permission to be unmuted?
I think I'm unmuted. Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Monica Whitaker. I'm co-chair of the Diocesan Anti-Racism Committee, and I'm connecting with you from St. Andrews in Sedona. On behalf of my co-chair, the Reverend Kelly Joyce, and the entire Anti-Racism Committee, I'm honored to share with you the highlights of the work that we have engaged in over the past year. Work that stands on the shoulders of many members, some of whom recently moved on, including Michael Ann Pepper and Jan Weathers, and some who passed away, especially Dorothy Salcedo and Craig Daniels. We are indebted to Canon Judith Connolly, who for nearly 2 decades served as chairperson of this committee and remains an active member at large. While there is much more work to do, we all appreciate those who have helped prepare the pathway forward. The committee is grateful for the opportunity to support our diocese's ongoing engagement in dismantling racism and working toward becoming a beloved community. Last November, we were directed by Bishop Redall to take a fresh look at our training materials and procedures, assess the geographic and generational diversity of the committee, and explore ways to engage the diocese in the work of dismantling racism through trainings and workshops. The committee reviewed resources and made recommendations for mandatory clergy and lay leader training to align with resolutions passed by multiple general conventions. We updated training materials to provide a mechanism for clergy, laity, and staff to comply with the diocesan anti-racism training policy, and recommended workshops and resources for congregations. We developed virtual anti-racism training for learning during and after the pandemic, and recently offered our first training using the revised curriculum with bishop and diocesan staff. The revised and expanded curriculum, entitled Pathways for Engaging in Anti-Racism Initiatives, is designed to provide an understanding, self-examination, and spiritual awakening grounded in our baptismal covenant into issues of racism. The training aligns with the directives of Resolution A044 of the 2018 General Convention and decades of previous resolutions that point the Church toward racial healing and reconciliation. The training also supports participants in applying learnings toward actionable goals relevant to their context. As a result of this training, participants will understand the historical component and context of the Episcopal Church's role in racism, explain the doctrine of discovery and the Episcopal Church's response to ongoing injustices enacted upon Indigenous peoples, identify how power, class, race, racism, internalized racial privilege and oppression impact systemic racism, recognize the role of the baptismal covenant in bringing about racial reconciliation, focus on increasing individual self-awareness regarding racism, and describe strategies and actions that can be taken to make institutions and systems less racist. Strategies for engaging in this work include prayer and Bible study, respectful communication guidelines, Zoom etiquette for virtual training, readings, viewing videos, listening to stories and testimonies, reflections, self-assessments, and small group discussions, exercises, digital tools, and visioning and action planning. Much of the committee's early discussions focused on ways to help participants acknowledge our shared but incomplete histories and support each other in using our increased awareness and new understandings in ways that are actionable in our personal lives and communities. Training begins with a 1-hour introductory session to meet with participants and orient them to the pre-work that they will be engaged in the subsequent 2 weeks. The pre-work includes videos, articles, and written reflections on histories of racism in our nation and the Episcopal Church, particularly among diverse peoples who reside in various Indigenous territories and the state of Arizona. The bulk of the training occurs over a period of a day and a half. A great deal of effort has gone into selecting technologies that are engaging for participants, especially as we connect virtually for the foreseeable future and plan to continue with a hybrid model after the pandemic. We are particularly grateful to the Reverend Robin Hollis for sharing her knowledge about such technologies and guiding the committee to embrace effective models for adult learning on virtual platforms. Following the 2-day training, participants will be supported over the next 2 months through facilitated colleague groups in living into the goals they initially explored in the visioning and action planning session. The final session of training occurs after those 2 months. Participants will reflect on how their thoughts and actions have shifted in the context of anti-racism training and through their personal commitment and actions toward the work of dismantling systemic racism and living into racial healing and reconciliation. The committee will be developing a 1-day refresher training to update skills and knowledge every 5 years. In the more immediate future, the committee will be training a core team of facilitators to provide for anti-racism training in all geographic areas of the diocese, including online. Individuals who have completed the Sacred Ground series are encouraged to apply to be trained as anti-racism facilitators. We'll also have a qualified team of facilitators who will offer anti-racism training in Spanish. Committee members are available to facilitate conversations on race and faith with your vestry or bishop's committee, congregation, or deanery. If you're looking for personal or congregational resources, please visit the Anti-Racism Resource webpage. If you have some questions, you're welcome to contact us at antiracism@azdiocese.org. At this time, the committee would like to invite all delegates to participate in a pre-assessment baseline survey. Your responses will help us to continue the evolution of our training and supporting initiatives. All answers are anonymous, and the results will be reviewed in aggregate. You can access the survey link through the chat message. I believe that Deacon Robin will be placing there. Or you can go to the link in the Chime app listed in today's schedule. We ask that you take the next 5 minutes to complete the survey now.
Thank you very much, Robin, and the entire Anti-Racism Committee. Deeply appreciate your work, which is so timely, and appreciate your creativity in engaging this, even at this convention via the survey. So we will give you 5 minutes. We will reconvene at 12:22 p.m. per my computer with the canon changes to give people time to complete that survey. All right, it is 12:22 by my clock, so we will reconvene for the presentation of canonical changes, and I'll introduce Chancellor Don Bivens.
Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, we're going to be talking about constitutional changes. The diocese is governed by a constitution that sets basic values and the canons, which are more like legislation that have to conform to the Constitution. We're looking at Article 6. It should be up on your screen. I think it was also in the page 10 of the Arizona Episcopalian in October. The gist of this is that the total number of members and their mode of election and the terms of the standing committee are as specified by the canons. And we just did an election as specified by the canons. The change here is to remove the word priestly from that last clause because it's been a source of potential confusion. So to be clear, what we're doing is saying that the committee shall at all times be comprised of an equal number of clergy, canonically and actually resident in, actively in exercising a regular ministry. It used to say regular priestly ministry, and of course what we have in this diocese is two sides of the committee. One is clerical, meaning priest and or deacon, and the other is lay. So what we're voting to do is to remove the word priestly. This is the second year in a row that we are doing this. That's required to make a constitutional change. So if we vote yes on this, we will have amended the Constitution as I've just described. Voting for a constitutional change has to be done by order. It requires a 2/3 vote, both in the clerical and in the lay orders. And if you vote yes, you will be voting to amend the Constitution as I've just described. I am not a member of the delegation for my church, so Bishop, with that explanation, I need you to call for a motion to approve the amendment to Article 6 of the Diocesan Constitution.
So I call for that motion, and I'd like to recognize Canon Clyde Coons and allow him to unmute himself.
Thank you, Bishop. It is my honor to move that the convention accept the proposed revision to Article 6, Section 1 of Diocesan Canon as presented.
Thank you. I call for a second and ask the unmuting powers to unmute Denise Muller.
Bishop, I second the motion.
Thank you, Denise. Any discussion? Are there anyone with raised hands who'd like to discuss the motion? Troy, if you do not wish to discuss the motion, please put your hand down. Then Frank Bergen, it appears you would like to discuss this, so please unmute Frank Bergen. Frank, if you wish to speak, you should unmute yourself.
Sorry. I support the motion wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else would like to speak to the motion? Seeing no one, I would call for the vote. Reminder that this is voting by orders. So clergy will need to vote in the clergy order, and lay people will need to vote in the lay order. So this is the clergy poll. So only vote in this poll if you are clergy. It has passed significantly. We now are going to do the poll for the lay order. Only lay people please vote in this poll. Okay, we have received more than 2/3 votes approving it in the lay order as well. So the Constitution change is approved. I now call upon the Reverend Canon David Pettengill to pray for the souls of the faithful departed. If we can unmute David Pettengill. Okay, I think that's the Galaxy S9. David, I think you're unmuted. Go ahead. All right. Not being able to hear David right now, I'm going to offer the prayers on his behalf. Into your being, O merciful God, we commend your servants. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, sheep of your own fold, lambs of your own flock, saints and sinners of your own redeeming. Keep them in the presence of your mercy, in the blessed walk with you, and the glorious company of saints who have journeyed before them. We pray especially for the Reverend John Peter Fabre, the Reverend Stephen R. Ford, the Reverend David M. Gillespie, the Reverend Samuel O. Hostler, the Reverend Glenn B. Jenks, the Reverend Ann R. Johnson, the Right Reverend Robert R. Shahan, the Reverend David L. Tom, the Reverend Ann P. Vellum, and all others you wish to remember. May their souls and the souls of all the departed through your eternal compassion continue in awareness of your loving, healing, strengthening presence. And may our memories of their lives continue to inspire us on our spiritual journey. Amen. I call for the presentation of resolutions and introduce the Reverend Ben Guerin as the interim chair of the Resolutions Committee.
Thank you, Bishop. The proposed resolutions were printed in the October issue of the Arizona Episcopalian, beginning on page 11. We have one resolution before us this convention. The companion diocese with Western Mexico, put forward by the Reverend David Chavez, the Reverend Robert Hendrickson, and the Reverend Canon David Hedges, endorsed by our Bishop, Bishop Riddle, that the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona enter into a companion diocese relationship with the Diocese of Western Mexico with the aim of establishing a partnership to enrich our respective diocesan communities through immersive cross-cultural learning experiences for clergy and lay leaders of all ages. As a member of the Clergy Order of Convention, as the Episcopal Chaplain of the University of Arizona in Tucson, I move that this resolution be put before the convention.
Thank you. I'm asking Nicole to pin the video of the resolution so that you can see the resolution rather than the speakers. And I would call for a second for the resolution. And so we will recognize Orgy to do the second. Can you unmute Orgy, please?
Good afternoon, all. I prayerfully second the motion.
Thank you. I would ask the sponsor of the resolution, the Reverend David Chavez, to speak to it. So please unmute the Reverend David Chavez.
One of the sponsors of the resolution like to speak to the resolution?
Yes, we're looking for David Chavez. There he is. Go ahead, David.
Father Chavez, you are unmuted.
I'm unmuted. First of all, I want to thank everyone who has seconded this resolution. It is again a sign of our desire to move beyond a specific framework of doing ministry together on the Americas. And so I believe that this step forward will challenge us to grow as a diocese, but also to expand the work and grace of Jesus Christ. And so again, I think the resolution, the language of the resolution expresses a non-paternalistic, a more missional approach to ministry between shared dioceses.
Thank you. Those who wish to speak to the resolution, please raise your hands. I'd ask them to first unmute the Church of the Epiphany, Tempe.
Are you ready? Okay. I just wanted to say, I think this is a wonderful initiative that we are beginning to undertake. However, I wonder what are the financial implications of this, especially since we are in a difficult financial time because of the COVID-19. Thank you.
So I will speak to that. There are no financial implications of this resolution. This is not, we are moving away from the sort of paternalistic way of having the American diocese, funding ministry in the Latin American diocese or in the Mexican diocese. So this is a partnership. We are not, I don't know what will come out of it, but the beginning is really relationship and shared evangelism and education rather than, this isn't going to be a project-based relationship, I think, if that might be a useful way of describing it. Dave English, recognize, he's unmuted, so go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful initiative. I just wanted to ask, will this be an additive initiative that we're not de-emphasizing, like work with Navajo land and some of our other companion diocese or other entities that we're collaborating with in other ways?
Good question. So the Diocese of Arizona does not currently have any extant companion diocese relationships. We had been in a companion diocese relationship with the Diocese of Navajo Land, I understand, before I got here, but that relationship concluded and ended. This does not inhibit us from having other companion diocese relationships, but is a relationship that would, as you put it, be additive, one that would begin. And I know there are certainly relationships with other places, sort of South Sudan. I know one of our congregations has a relationship with the Diocese of El Salvador. This is not in any way replacing those. This is something that is adding to those relationships.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Unmute Chuck Milhone, please.
Chuck Milhone. I serve as deacon at the Episcopal Church of St. John the Baptist in Glendale, Arizona. Historically, we have had a relationship with the Diocese of Western Mexico in the past, and I call the question.
Thank you. All those in favor of calling the question, please raise your hands using the blue raise hand feature. So that is, if you want to vote on the resolution and end discussion, raise your hand. All right, we have a majority. So we will now vote on the resolution using a poll. And once you have voted, if you can put your hands down in the participant list, that would be helpful. All right, the resolution has passed, and so we are now in a companion diocese with the relationship with the Diocese of Western Mexico. I would ask the Reverend David Chavez to, while he is still on the computer today, to reach out to Bishop Gomez to inform him of the decision of the Diocese of Arizona and to extend our loving and as they put it in their resolution at their diocese, our fraternal greetings to them. Are there any resolutions from the floor? If you have a resolution from the floor you wish to support, please raise your hand. John Tees, your hand is raised. If we can unmute you to offer a resolution from the floor, if that's what you wish to do. All right, John, you were unmuted. Okay, John does not have a resolution from the floor. Seeing no more resolutions from the floor, I will ask for new business items, which I don't believe there are any of. I will call for reports by title. Every congregation received notification of the reports being available online prior to the start of convention. This year, there are both written and video reports, so invite you to review those. They are actually quite interesting. Ready to move the thanks? Good. I'm so subtle. Okay. I will now get to, we're almost done. I said we were going to be done by 1 o'clock, and I would like it noted that it's 12:41. I want to offer incredible gratitude and thanks to everyone who helped make this convention possible. And I want to particularly highlight right now the Reverend Canon Timothy Dombeck and the Church of the Advent, who has been hosting us here these last 3 days. This is the living embodiment of what happens when you brag to your bishop about all the technology that you've installed in your church, is that you end up with convention at your church. So thank you not just to Timothy, but to all the members of Advent who have helped us here with all the audiovisual stuff, with their camera work, with their sound work. Thank you very much. Wish to thank all those who helped with the Eucharist, all of the readers, the musicians, and all the clergy who came that evening, and particularly to the Reverend Canon Holly Herring, who put together the liturgy and combined all the wonderful resources about praying for creation. Wish to thank our translators, Gabriela de Castro, Claudia Azar, and Chris Ryan. Offer thanks to the Reverend Dr. Leah Shade, our keynote speaker, and to the Reverend Canon Pam Hyde for her presentation and for her guiding hand and inspiration on the topic of care of creation, both at this convention and in the diocese as a whole. A huge thanks to our diocesan staff as well, who have managed to, under difficult circumstances, do something that we had never done before. So particularly gratitude to Canon Kathy Black, Canon Nicole Krug, Tiffany Kramer, Serena Adol, and Canon Bill Potts for their work here. Is there a motion? Oh, and you should look for a post-convention survey later today that we would like to have you complete. Oh, and I see also note about the Anti-Racism Committee's survey that, wait, where did it go? That 275 out of 353 have completed the survey. So thank you very, very much for doing that as well. A reminder that Standing Committee will be meeting in, let's say the Standing Committee will be meeting at 1 p.m. over Zoom. Standing Committee members, you all have the link for the Zoom. So I will see you at 1 o'clock for our brief Standing Committee meeting. And then, is there a motion to adjourn? And I will say, for the purposes of this, you can do that in the chat. Timothy Dombeck has moved to adjourn. Is there a second? It is seconded, and it is thirded and fourthed. I will take it as given that the convention would like to adjourn. Thank you all very much, and have a blessed and wonderful day and week. Thank you.